I'm surprised that things are not a lot worse. I'm struggling at the moment to come up with things to talk about, which would suggest that I shouldn't be talking at all, but I like talking as well. And I've got 30 minutes to kill as I drive home. And being a law-abiding citizen these days, I pulled over to start the video. You can't handle a phone while you're driving, alright? But you know, I've got nothing to talk about, but I thought, well, I'll give myself a topic and then just see what comes of it. So I'm surprised things are not a lot worse than they are. In saying that, you know, what I'm getting at there is that most of the commentary that comes to me, and not a lot comes to me actually. Look, I listen to the BBC World Service and to a goddaughter. Mostly, I don't hear much from anybody else. Occasionally I see some news. I don't hear much commentary from anyone. So, you know, as I always say, I'm not on social media, and I don't count this as social media, believe it or not, even though it's YouTube, because I don't talk to anyone on it except myself. So that's not very social, is it? Okay, but all right, here's my perspective for the day. For example, we had the riots at the Capitol in the United States of America recently, just a few days ago. And the immediate reaction by everyone, I think, was, wow, that's bad. But I'm surprised that it wasn't a lot worse, given everything. You know, you can put a positive spin on these things. You know, quite a long time ago, with my goddaughter, who I mentioned, you know, like there was a lot of talk of the transition of power from Trump to Biden being one that might bring America down in short order, which it still might. Look, if America goes down at this point, it's to do with reasons that go far deeper than just Donald Trump being a bit grumpy about not being able to be a president for life. You know, if a single man like Donald Trump can bring down America, then it deserves to be brought down. You know, it means its institutions weren't strong enough to withstand even a Trump attack on its much vaunted democracy and all that sort of stuff, you know. Alright, so if America crashes out of the game, American democracy crashes out of the game as a result of Donald Trump, for example, well, it wasn't about Donald Trump at all, was it? It was America crashes out in that scenario because it deserves to crash out. But at the moment it's not crashing out. In fact, from what I've heard from Joe Biden over the last few days, he's making wonderful speeches that he's giving America its best shot as far as I can see. Now obviously I'm not a Democrat supporter and I'm not a Republican supporter because I'm appalled by American politics all round, you know. But quite a while ago, when chatting with my goddaughter, we were kind of taking bets on how much of a drama was going to unfold if Trump should lose. And as a result of Trump losing, you know, and I said, I reckon, you know, I often get my predictions wrong. I predicted Hillary would win last time. and then Donald Trump won. So I'm not a very good predictor of things. In fact, half the time, I like predicting the most unlikely scenario, because then if you're right, you sound like a great prophet. All right. So, but I said, I don't, like everyone's saying there's going to be civil war breakout if Donald Trump loses. And, spurred on by Donald Trump himself. A lot of people were predicting that, in fact, on both sides. I think a lot of Trump supporters were kind of suggesting, were they not? I don't know. I only hear secondhand, really, because I'm not on social media. And listening to the BBC World Service, you're not hearing a lot of commentary. All you're hearing is the BBC interviewing one party and then another party, and then it's not like this great big curiosity mission, the BBC World Service. It's like the BBC World Service has no opinion on anything, and they're just interviewing people left, right and centre all around the world, all the time, ever curious, always curious, and never actually listening. And I think that's great, the way the BBC World Service does that. And they say, Watergate, they might start interviewing everybody all over again. People they've interviewed 50 times before in the past who were there at Watergate. And, the reporter will say, excuse me for the croaky voice, wish I had a water. I have got a water. And then, tell us what happened at Watergate. They might say to Bill, what's his name, if he's still alive, one of the guys involved, I can't remember what their names are. Tell us all about that. We're really curious. We'd like to know all about it. And he might quite rightly say, you've interviewed me every 5 years since Watergate and asked the same questions, don't you? The BBC World Service might say, oh yeah, but we don't actually listen to you. We just interview you. And it's not about we, the reporters, listening to you. It's about us just asking you questions that you've told us, to which, the answers to which you have told us before, but we didn't listen because, everyone wants to hear the answers again, see if you've changed them a little bit since the last time, But anyway, so, my goddaughter and I were chatting, and I was thinking, because from what I was hearing, people were saying, look, if Donald Trump, and this is people on both sides, as I said, I think Donald Trump supporters would have suggested that if Donald Trump loses and Biden gets in, number one, it's going to be fraud. Now, the funny thing about Donald Trump and his base, and this is a really interesting point, I think, is that Donald Trump, even before the voting started, did he not pretty much say, this time and last time in 2016, did he not say things like, if I so-called lose, if the vote shows that I've lost, it's fraud. If I don't come out on top, it's fraud and cheating. And if I do come out on top, it's not fraud. Is that roughly the message Donald Trump has been giving us all along, even before the voting started? So, let's say in a hypothetical, like Donald Trump did say that, before the voting even started. If I lose, I haven't lost. If I lose, it's widespread fraud. No matter what happens in the vote, no matter how people vote, I will win in a landslide, otherwise it's fraud. Now that's interesting, the fact that he said that before the voting started. Now theoretically, just to stress test his idea there, imagine if America then went on to run the most rigorous election that it has ever run. Now, just hypothetical for now. We'll come back to reality in a second. Right. And to remember, Donald Trump has locked that idea in. He's locked it in, and that's really important. All right, let's just lock that in. If he loses, it's fraud. Because he will win in a landslide. He will win in a landslide. Right, so if he doesn't win in a landslide, it's fraud. Okay, that's a fact. All right, we have to lock that in as a fact. Okay. Now, let's say that America then went on to go overboard. Now, I'm not saying they did, but let's say America then went on to go overboard and ran the most watertight election ever, which is possible. They could have doubled the budget for it all, tripled the budget for the entire thing, and run the most wonderful election process ever. Every vote validated and all that sort of stuff. They could have put 1 million people on the case to run the world's tightest election. Hypothetically. Now, if they had done that, and then Donald Trump had lost, well, you've got a disconnect there, haven't you? Because even though in that hypothetical example there was no fraud, and Donald Trump did lose on the count, the fact that has already been locked in is that he has won in a landslide. So in that scenario, logically, he's won in a landslide in the minds of his base, for example. He's won in a landslide, and at the same time, he's also lost. So both things are true, right? Remember, we locked that other thing in. So what has happened here? Donald Trump has won in a landslide, and he has definitely lost. He's definitely won, and he's definitely lost at the same time. All right. Now, what have you got there? A recipe for civil war, of course. Now, what sort of election was run? And you would expect many people to die in that scenario. Now, what happened in reality, I think, and it doesn't matter whether I'm right or not. See, this is just a hypothetical, because even that hypothetical, that stands true, as a hypothetical. All right. Now, I think that it was a rigorous election, as far as I can tell. Doesn't matter if I'm right or not. We're just entertaining ideas. We're philosophers. We can do that. But, let's just entertain the idea I'm right. And I can be wrong. But I think it was the most rigorous election that the United States could possibly have put on, given the circumstances. I think there would have been errors all around the joint. Geez, it's hard to count 200 million votes and to not have errors, or 150 million votes, however many votes were counted. There'll be errors, and there will be fraud too. I actually worked for the electrical commission. I worked for the electoral commission, making a bit of extra cash on my holidays once. I was counting votes. I could have lied. There's only so much double checking you can do. I had Labour votes and Liberal votes, and I could have just said, well, that's a Liberal vote. And I could have just said, I'm going to make that one Labour. Just the one vote, just to make myself feel powerful. I could have done that, and that would have been fraud. But had I done that, the fraud would not have been widespread enough for it to invalidate the election. Even if I had done it a hell of a lot, there were certain cross-checking mechanisms in place, and they do a recount if the margins are too close and things like that. They do that. They do a recount even in America in such a case, as they did in Georgia. And if the margins are too close, they say, well, that's within the tolerance levels. We can't tolerate that because we do accept that there'll be a bit of fraud and all that sort of stuff. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something to be expected. There'll be error and fraud. So they have this thing called a runoff election in America. And in Georgia, the margins were so close that, you know, even the system itself acknowledges that, you know, well, fraud, even a minimal amount of fraud could be a problem here. So we'll have the election again, a runoff election. And they had that, and this time Biden won, you know, on the vote at least, you know. But all right, let's get back to my point. I think that the election that was just run, you know, I think all the election officials, Republican and Democrats, because in the Democrat-led states, the ones who had Democrat, how does it work? It doesn't, you know, it's not my business, but because Australia is my business, not America. But I think the Republicans run the election process in the Republican-held states, and the Democrats run the elections in the Democrat-held states. But the point is, I think everybody knew that this election was going to be challenged one way or another. How did they know? Because Donald Trump said he wasn't going to accept it. So, from what I've heard, people were taking a lot more care than they even do normally, because they knew that there were probably going to be legal challenges to the vote if they didn't go Donald Trump's way, especially. So there was plenty of evidence of people carefully stacking votes that have been counted and shrink wrapping them and labelling them and all that sort of stuff, just to make sure that, you know, just in case there was a recount, that they were going to be as accurate as possible. I think it was the most accurate election that's ever been held in America, because everyone was being hyper careful, because Donald Trump had already claimed victory before the vote had even started. So you have to be hyper careful in such a case. So election officials all over America were going to extraordinary lengths to make sure that they didn't get egg on their faces, you know, if Donald Trump should challenge the outcome. All right. So I think this election was much more rigorous than most. How does that sound? Even if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. But let's just hold this one as a hypothetical in your head. Now, if you're the sort of person who say it was not, you know, then you're not a philosopher. You know, if you're already thinking in your head, what a load of crap, you're not a good thinker. You know, because I'm not asking you to accept this as fact. All I'm asking you to do is take it to dinner. This idea, entertain it. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. And this is what people can't do a lot, I think, these days. It's just entertain the idea. So all I'm saying now is, we entertained the hypothetical earlier that it was a perfectly rigorous election. All right, even I don't think that was true, but I entertained it. And I saw that even in the situation, you know, I'm doing reductio ad absurdum, I think they call it. Logic here, whatever. I'm not great at philosophy. Don't worry about that. You won't be caught out by me. But all right. But the point is, I spotted how ridiculous Donald Trump's claim was by pointing out the hypothetical that if it was a rigorous election, a perfectly rigorous election, and that Donald Trump lost, you know, I pointed out how illogical that would be. You know, because he would have won and lost at the same time. So he was being stupid. He wasn't being stupid. He was just being, you know, the sort of person President Xi is, a president who wants to rule for life, and doesn't believe in democracy. You know, I've proved that much. Donald Trump doesn't believe in democracy. He wants to make America great again, but not great in terms of democracy, just great in terms of being number one and winning, I think, you know, on the world stage. I think that's what he meant by great. I don't think he meant making America great again like it was in 1965, or 1975 or 1955 or at any other time in history. I don't think he wanted to bring some past America back again, because Donald Trump, because all those Americas were democratic, and he's not into democracy. I think both sides of politics over there would agree with that. I think, you know, because nobody wants to, even people on Donald Trump's side, they never did want to accept the idea of a Donald Trump loss, did they? And if not, well, they don't believe in democracy. And Donald Trump himself definitely did not want to entertain or take to dinner the idea that the election was going to deliver to him anything but a win. So he's anti-democratic. I think we've proved that much. Right, let's get back to entertaining this idea of this election having been more rigorous than the last, let's say, 20 US elections. All right, so now, all right, I am happy to guess that it was. Only because everyone knew that there were going to be legal challenges around this, and what governor of any state wants egg on his face or her face, you know, because you'd be world news, wouldn't you? Donald Trump was watching everybody, and if he was going to lose a state or a college, you know, vote, everyone knew in advance. Everyone knew in advance that if Donald Trump was going to lose, that Donald Trump was, one college vote or one state, your given state knew that he was going to cry foul in advance before the vote even started. So you knew you were going to be scrutinised, and if he or his supporters or his people even saw one chink in your armour, as far as running a rigorous election goes, even if Donald Trump and all his minions were to find anything that even was had the sniff of fraud about it, that governor, whether he or she be Republican or Democrat, knew that he or she was going to be world news in a very bad way. And what a way to live the rest of your life, knowing that you were the idiot, who couldn't prove that you had run a good election. It would stick with you forever. So everyone, I think, was taking undue care. Now, even so, and probably, I think there were governors doing all they could. Oh, I don't want Donald Trump to make me look stupid. What'll I do? Blah, blah, blah. All right, I've got my two observers. And then, one's a Democrat and one's a Republican. They're all doing that, And, it's so political. There was one governor in one place that put coverings on the windows so the crowds couldn't be in there peering, watching everyone count the vote. Who knows why? I don't know why. This is just one example. And even, that governor came unstuck, I think. That's a sign of fraud. What they did, they covered the windows so that we couldn't see the fraud, which is probably not true. And also, they didn't let the observers stand close enough to the tables. All right, so maybe that, so that governor stuffed up. But maybe, that governor did stuff up a little bit. They probably didn't, have fraud going on in there. They might have, I don't know. But the point is, all right, that was one place. But, they didn't find much, did they? Trump and his people were desperate to find evidence of widespread fraud. And they're hanging their hat on this. A couple of windows were covered here. And they were supposed to be, we wanted them to be within 2 meters of the counting tables. And they made them 5 meters away from the counting tables. Fraud in that one little spot, which might not have been fraud anyway. But the point is, for reasons like that, when Donald Trump, where clearly Donald Trump is clutching at straws to find examples of fraud, that was what you would call an isolated example of what was only possibly fraud, not even definitely fraud, and they're trying to use that, and maybe one or two other examples, I don't know, of definite widespread fraud, where, as Donald Trump said, I definitely won in a landslide, but these examples of fraud, when you extrapolate that over the whole of America, all of America was doing that. So I think, for all reasons implied, that this was a very rigorously run election over in the United States. Now, I think that Donald Trump, even if you think he won, he didn't win in a landslide, did he? Given the level of scrutiny there was on the election, Democrats and Republicans in every state and all that sort of stuff, observing the count. Oh yes, maybe in one place they made them stand too far back so they couldn't quite see, what was written on every single vote and all that sort of stuff. Maybe not, don't know. But the point is, in general, there was enough observers and enough rigour in the counting process to, I think, prove that Donald Trump did not win in a landslide. Now, the other day, just before the Capitol was stormed, Donald Trump, as part of his claims of victory, he claimed victory, by the way, really early in the count, and he claimed victory before the vote started, of course. All right, but just the other day he said, we won in a landslide, we all know that. Well, even if you're a Donald Trump lover, that's a lie. So I'm just teasing out the definite, the things that are beyond reasonable doubt lies. All right, so he didn't win in a landslide. I think he lost, actually. When you weigh everything up, yes, some isolated fraud, of course. Remember, if I was in an election, if I was an election official once and I was counting votes, I could have tweaked a few, and that would have been fraud, but it wouldn't have been widespread enough to bring down the Liberal government of the day or the Labor one. Same goes in America. This election was, as far as I can see, run rigorously enough such that even if there was quite a lot of fraud, which I don't think there was, but even if there was, there wasn't enough, to deliver Trump a win, let alone a landslide. So, that's all rubbish. Now, even given all of that to bring this episode, believe it or not, I'm still remembering how I started this episode out. Given all of that, I said, look, I was saying this to my goddaughter, all right, there's got to be some friction. She said that too. We agreed on all of this, by the way. We agree on most things in the end. I said, whichever way it slices, if Donald Trump wins, I predict, there's a lot of people predicting that America will break into civil war. People on the Republican side are predicting that, and people on the Democrat side are predicting that. Because on the Republican side, well, on the Trump side, people are saying if Trump doesn't win, we're going to just start a war. I think they were saying that in their heads. And just for fun, because I like to sort of predict the unlikely when I'm hearing this sort of thing, because then if you get it right, you sound like a prophet, as I said. I said, I am going to predict that none of these riots are going to break out now. And I did, and she'll tell you. I don't need to prove anything. I'm talking to myself. But I said, there'll be friction, of course. There was friction after the 2016 election. There's friction after every election. I say no more than 10 people dead. There might be riots or whatever, but I say, I'm going to predict that there's going to be there's not going to be a civil war, I said. I'll predict that. Now, I had no evidence I'm no expert now, so I didn't know what I was talking about, but, even a pig can make predictions. There's a pig in America or Turkey or something that is famous for having predicted 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 elections in a row. So you don't have to be smart to be a prophet. You just be lucky sometimes. Anyway, I said no more than 10. Well, we're up to 5 so far. 5 people were killed in the Capitol riots, the storming of the Capitol the other day. Well, that's less than 10, isn't it? And as I think about that, I'm thinking, it is true, I think. Whenever things seem to be really bad and the world seems to be careening careering towards chaos. You can almost sort of say to yourself, well, it could be a lot worse. You know, I'm amazed that the world's so good. You know, like the world's terrible at the moment in many ways, of course, but it's surprising it's not a lot worse. You can say that in any era. You know, if anyone ever comes to you and says, oh, it wasn't that bad, what happened in America the other day? Storming of the Capitol, and 5 people got killed. I was like, well, you know, yeah, that's bad compared to no people getting killed, I suppose, and the Capitol not even getting stormed. It's a lot better than civil war breaking out and, you know, 100 million people getting killed, isn't it? Oh, that's just a stupid argument. The other person could say, and they could be right. But the point is, I had nothing to talk about in this episode, so I thought I'd talk about that. You know, that topic. I had to make up something. You haven't learned a thing, have you? Did I just waste your time? Probably. Could coronavirus be a lot worse? Yeah, that's an interesting one, because that's really bad. It's not bad here in Australia. We don't have coronavirus here in Australia. This is the way it is. We've got, you know, I think, what do we got? I don't even know. Maybe we've got 10 cases in the whole country. I don't know. I know here in Victoria, we've essentially had no coronavirus for most of the last X number of months. Maybe 3 or 4 months we've had pretty much no coronavirus. Yeah, it may come back again. But, so here, it could be a lot worse. So my episode topic holds, I wonder how many minutes I've done, because it's covered 32 minutes. That's enough for an episode, surely. So could coronavirus be a lot worse? You know, because people could say, this coronavirus is terrible, that sort of thing. Is this a valid way of looking at the world? To say, well, it could be a lot worse? Or is it just boring and dumb and stupid and very insensitive to people who are suffering? Probably. Haven't really thought that deeply about it. Because as you know, I just thought of the topic and I'm just trying to think of things to talk about around that topic. Right, so coronavirus, could it be a lot worse than it has been in 2020? It's 2021 now, just started 2021. So you could look at 2020 saying, could it get any worse? And I think 2021 might well provide the answer to that. I may well be dead by the end of 2021. I am in peak physical condition at the moment, happy in a land where there is no coronavirus. And by the end of this year, Australia could well be ravaged by coronavirus and I could be dead of it. So, as we sit here right now, could coronavirus be, is it a shocking thing we are looking at? Coronavirus all around the world at the moment. Well, yeah, but maybe 2021 will prove that it's not nearly as bad as it could be. And because already I think mutant strains are developing, this could be a pandemic that gets so bad in 2021 that any statement right now, as I sit here, that coronavirus is very terrible, I can already see this is insensitive to people who have suffered due to coronavirus so far in 2020 already. All right, but this is just a random philosophical episode. It's not a sensitive episode. Not everything you say in life has to be always sensitive, especially when you're not doing any planning about what you're talking about. But 2021 well may prove that, as we sit here right now at the start of 2021, that it could be a hell of a lot worse. Maybe this is as good as it gets. Now, I don't know whether this episode has been a positive one or a negative one. I don't think I'm feeling happy about this episode, or quite depressed. But as I say, I had no objective in starting this episode, or the only thing I planned was to talk. I planned to talk, but I didn't know where it was going to go, and that's where it went. The world is pretty bad, but it could be a lot worse. Yes, I think this episode has been about nothing. That's what most of the world's talking about most of the time. They're talking a lot, but they're saying nothing. I just joined in.